Hey everyone, this is Mike from the Comic Book Trove, here today with another book review. Today I'm going to be taking a look at the recently released All-Star Superman Deluxe edition from DC Comics. Now, All-Star Superman is a story that I think at this point maybe doesn't need too much of an introduction. It's pretty much a classic Superman story at this point in time, beloved by many people, very highly regarded. If you were to do a search online of greatest Superman comics/stories, this would probably come up in just about everybody's list. And yet, I've only just read this for the first time after picking this deluxe edition up and reading it in the last week or so. I'm going to give my thoughts today on what I think about it, whether I think it deserves that status as one of the greatest ever Superman stories. I'm going to give an overview, obviously, of this specific deluxe edition to give you an idea of what it looks like, maybe help you out if you're thinking of picking it up yourself. But spoiler warning, because as I say, I will mention some of the plot details. I'm not going to cover the entire story, but I will share some thoughts, certainly. So if we take a look at the dust jacket, first of all, there's a very glossy dust jacket here. You can see the light not shining off that. It's a very shiny one. Got this cool image of Superman on the front by Frank Quitely. And Quitely does the artwork throughout here as well. So he is the penciler for the full series, as well as digital inking/colouring from Jamie Grant, with the writer, of course, being Grant Morrison. On the spine there, All-Star Superman again. Nice image at the bottom here with Superman kissing Lois Lane. Pretty iconic moment there from the story. And on the back of the rim, just Superman. And you get your blurb and your contents and everything down there. Pretty cool. Underneath, on the book itself, we get this nice wraparound image of Superman kind of flying through the sunset, the twilight, whatever. Pretty cool image, again, by Frank Quitely. All the artwork is. We'll take a look inside. So, All-Star Superman was part of DC's very short-lived All-Star line of comics. The only other one was the infamous All-Star Batman and Robin by Frank Miller and Jim Lee. Happy to say that this is not as controversial or as notoriously bad, I could say, as a story. This was the only other effort of the All-Star line, Grant Morrison teaming with Frank Quitely. They had previously worked together on New X-Men, of course, which is another run I need to talk about at some point. But yeah, this is just a very interesting story, I'll say. So we jump right in here to the beginning of the whole thing. And the basic premise, which is set up very early on in this first issue, is such a simple yet fascinating one. It really is. So there's this kind of space mission going on. This kind of space base thing is flying too close to the sun. Something goes wrong and they start crashing towards the sun itself. Superman has to fly in and save the day here. In doing so, his body, because of the fact that it's basically right up against the sun, his body absorbs too much solar radiation. And he finds out in these early scenes from this scientist guy who he actually saved in that incident, that his body has absorbed so much solar radiation that it's actually breaking down. His cells are literally breaking down. And it's so basically we've got a series here in a story in which we've got a Superman who knows from very early on that he's effectively dying. He's terminally ill because of what's happened to him. And he doesn't have long left to live. Which is a pretty interesting situation to put Superman in, because of course he's this kind of invulnerable hero, this guy who is generally so immune to harm in any way. But here we've got the fact that he is dying and that is unavoidable. And he knows it and accepts it, and so he sets about trying to spend his final days doing as much good as he can and to leave humanity in the best position possible to deal with a world without him. So there is an inherent sadness and tragedy to the whole thing, but there are also these just beautiful moments of just great joy and happiness as he accomplishes some great feats throughout here. So I just think that Grant Morrison does a great job of understanding what makes Superman Superman. Tribute is paid throughout to all different eras of Superman, really, from the very early days of the Golden Age through the Silver Age with that kind of Silver Age wackiness. I feel like there's elements of the Christopher Reeve movies in here, the John Byrne reboot. There's sort of a bit of everything in here, but there's no specific continuity which this belongs to. It's just that I myself, as I was reading it, was able to sort of see all these different versions and incarnations of Superman being paid tribute to in this story. So I think that Morrison did a great job of that throughout this full thing, really. But we see scenes early on. There's this great bit early on, which might be the best part of the whole story for me, where he reveals his identity, that he is really Clark Kent to Lois. And it's really cool. He creates this little costume for her. He develops a formula that's able to give her his powers for 24 hours. So we get this issue where she flies around with him and experiences everything he does for a day. And it's a really cool issue. It's really nice. Around about this point in the story was where I was thinking to myself, where is the classic, typical Grant Morrison weirdness? Like, when's this story going to take a turn and become completely strange? It kind of happens here, because initially it starts out pretty straightforward. Superman's ill. He's going to do some good deeds. But certainly it gets a bit more complicated than that, really starting all here with these two guys who travel back in time. And I don't really know who these characters are. I can't really remember them from previous stories. But throughout this story, if you're familiar with Morrison's work, you're probably aware that they tend to bring in all kinds of abstract and often complex concepts and story plot elements into the stories. And that's kind of the same here. There's that awesome moment. Because of the fact that she's superpowered, they're able to share a kiss on the moon. Really nice moment. Beautifully drawn, I think, by Quitely. But yeah, so it's not the most simple story. It is probably one that you would benefit from further read-throughs, and I do plan to read it again at some point. But at the same time, it was never too complicated to, diminish my enjoyment of the story in any way. And that's not something I can say for all Grant Morrison stories. I don't find that I can enjoy some stuff that Morrison's written, because at times I do think that they're just too complicated, the stories. For me, sometimes I spend as much time trying to figure out what I'm actually reading about as actually just enjoying it. So I was a little wary coming into this one, but I'm happy to say that wasn't an issue here. That I was able to it's a story that you can just follow it through and enjoy it without too much of a headache trying to figure out what's going on, which was a nice surprise. That's the only thing I was really worried about, I think, when I finally got around to reading it. But yeah, so it turns out, that the whole thing with Superman getting ill, that whole accident originally had been planned by Lex Luthor, so it's kind of his final scheme to kill Superman, and effectively he's succeeded. Then you get all these other Supermen turning up at points throughout the story. Time travel, dimension hopping is all stuff that comes into it. Probably my least favourite part of the whole story was this issue that involves Bizarro and Bizarro type beings. I just think Bizarro is a frustrating character to read, just in general. That's not because of Grant Morrison, that's just in general. I just think that Bizarro kind of sucks. But it was alright, it didn't last too long. And there is this interesting character as well. Superman gets briefly trapped on the Bizarro world, or a Bizarro world anyway. And there's just one character on this world who is actually intelligent, as opposed to speaking in the Bizarro way. That was pretty cool. And what's being set up as well. So there's this moment early on, I think, with those two time traveling guys I mentioned actually. They come from the future and they reveal to Superman that they knew he was going to die around this time in history. And they know from their records that prior to dying, Superman completed 12 heroic labors. A lot like, obviously, Hercules' famous 12 labors. So that's kind of what we see Superman doing, as he sets about trying to do some great deeds and do as much good as he can in his final days. He ends up accomplishing 12 great things. But what's interesting is that it's not like they're presented to you in a very obvious way, so you keep count of them. It's not like, and that was Superman's first labour, and then the next chapter is him doing something else, and it's like, and that was the second one. It's not noted for you, so it's not like that. If you could keep track of it, obviously, but it's just done in a kind of matter of course way. He's just doing these things. He's not like he's trying to count to 12 and be like, okay, I've done 12 good things now. It's just an interesting point of comparison, of perspective really, of these characters from the future who recorded it as 12 heroic deeds. But overall, I just found this to be a very interesting story. What I liked about it the most was, I think, as I mentioned already, just the fact that this, as I read this character, this interpretation of Superman, I was able to easily identify that as a great Superman character, you know, a great version of the character. You know, I just think Morrison did a great job of presenting Superman as a great hero and understanding why he is arguably the ultimate superhero. You know, he's the first ever superhero, really, and to this day is kind of like the ultimate beacon of good. You know, he's just this sort of unparalleled force for good. There's not really any other hero that is so just pure, non-stop, you know, in their intentions. And, you know, there's ultimately, I suppose, a bit of a sad ending, really, because Superman, although a kind of ambiguous ending, I was thinking about whether or not I should show the ending off, but I did give a spoiler warning. So in the final issue, the sun gets destabilized by this evil creature. So Superman literally, at this point, he's pretty much about to explode anyway. Like, he's turning white, all his cells are just on the verge of completely breaking down. And he flies off into the sun itself. And in this final image of him, Lois, we see that it's a year later since he does this, and he's never returned. Everybody thinks he's dead, assumes he is. Lois Lane still believes that he is in fact somewhere in the sun, working on it to try and keep it stable. And then we see this image that reveals, or at least suggests, that he is, but it's not clear as to whether he actually is there, or if this is maybe just what Lois is imagining that he's doing, something like this, where he's just in the sun doing something to keep it going. But nevertheless, it's a great final act of heroism that you'd expect really nothing less from Superman. And then you get some nice extras in the back that summarise different parts of the series, the characters, the covers, the artwork. Overall, a good deluxe edition. Didn't really mention it up to this point, but the binding is, I think it's a mixture of sewn and glued. So, you know, it's not a very thick book, but early on you do kind of need to hold it open a little bit. It's not too bad, it will stay open fairly early on. But I have no issues with that anyway. I only tend to mention binding on the channel, on videos, if I have a particular problem with it. So, in general, if I don't bring it up, it's because I didn't have an issue. But yeah, so that's the deluxe edition of All-Star Superman. Probably didn't say anything about the story that hasn't been covered before, really. This is just as much an overview of the specific deluxe edition as a review of the story. All I will really say about that is I thought it was very enjoyable. It is a story that you can read without any prior Superman knowledge. As I say, it's an out-of-continuity story, so you can just read this. I think it's a great version of Superman, I suppose. I think I've already mentioned that a few times, but that's the standout element to it for me. It's just how well Morrison depicted this character in here, and showed a hero who continues to be the ultimate kind of beacon for good, even when he knows that his days are numbered and could easily spend his final days just in a state of depression or being more selfish, but not for a second does that ever enter his mind, and that's really why Superman is the ultimate superhero. So overall, yeah, a very good story. I do think it deserves the honour of being frequently cited as one of the greatest Superman stories, and it's something I recommend checking out, whether or not you read the deluxe edition, or I think it's always available pretty much in trade paperbacks. So yeah, definitely something worth checking out. But as always, thank you for watching the video, for sticking with me through this. hopefully it's been insightful, giving you a good view of this book, and let me know what you think about this deluxe edition. Maybe you're interested in picking it up or not, or just about All-Star Superman. Did you enjoy it? Did you maybe think it's overrated? Happy to hear different opinions. But again, thanks, and I'll be back again soon with another video.